guys, welcome back to Queen of Quirk. In this video series, I'm going to be sharing with you guys my conversations with 6 Trinity College Dublin students who are from different countries all around the world about their experiences in applying to Trinity, in their accommodation in Dublin, and about being an international student in Ireland in general. If you're new to this channel, hi, my name is Jane and I am in the dual BA program between Trinity College Dublin and Columbia University in New York City. I have just spent the last 2 years at Trinity College Dublin, but I am from Ireland, so I am not an international student. So I thought making this video could be helpful to any prospective students out there who are not from Ireland. In this video, I'll be talking to 6 students, 3 from the United States, 2 who were living in Europe when they first applied, and 1 from the UK.
My name is Jackson Littlewood. I'm from Colorado in the US, and I'm studying politics, philosophy, economics, and sociology at Trinity. But since I'm going into my 3rd year, that course is being narrowed down with subjects, so now I'm just doing politics and economics.
I'm Gelsey. I'm from the United States. I obviously go to Trinity and I study English. 20 years old, just doing my best. I lived most of my life in Georgia and now I live in Arizona.
I'm Alice, I'm from England and I study English, which is kind of ironic. I have a question about why did you leave England to study English?
I'm Julia Bohenick, I'm from the United States, I live in Pennsylvania. I'm 20 years old, I'm doing English studies, going into 3rd year.
Hi, I'm Gaida, I'm French and Italian. I grew up in Singapore and I study English literature.
I'm Maddie. I'm American originally, but my family all lives in Italy and I study mathematics and philosophy.
I'd love to ask you about the transition to moving to a whole new country and what it was like applying for visas.
It's kind of one of those weird things is there's not much you can do until you get there when it comes to visa stuff. When you go into the customs thing at the airport, you had to have all these papers and I had what I assumed was all of them, but then the person didn't think that was enough. So I started crying and basically had a panic attack at this because I was like, this is what they told me to bring. I don't know what to tell you. And I think it was just the customs officer, not I think I had everything that was right. So I had to get my phone and my phone was on 10% and show them all this stuff. I'm like, why would I be making this up?
So as far as visas go, I didn't find it very hard at all. The only difficult part is to get an appointment.
Yeah.
Irish Naturalization and Immigration Service. As soon as you get to Ireland, they say you have to get an appointment by a certain date. Every morning at 10 or something like that on a weekday, what you'll do is you'll go on their website and then you'll just keep refreshing the page over and over again until you can find an appointment. And then you just take any appointment you get, for sure. Just put everything else aside, school, whatever. The school will understand if you're missing a class or something.
The visa thing took a while. It did. It took me till November and it was a bit of a pain in my butt. It's stressful because you think you're going to get kicked out of the country, which you're not. You're kind of in the same boat with everybody and you just gotta you just work hard. And Trinity did get me an appointment, let me tell you. So they tried. I
don't know if they're still doing that part all online for people who are getting a visa for the first time.
Yeah.
Online, then you go in to have an appointment. Because now I can renew my visa every year without a physical appointment. I can do it online.
Oh, okay.
And I'm with the coronavirus that they're trying to transition it fully online.
Yeah.
Technically, it's not technically a visa. I once had a very rude man at the postal service tell me that I needed to have an ID and the only thing I had was my Inish card. And I was like, oh, here's my visa thing. And he was like, it's not a visa, it's a immigration privilege. I'm like, they're essentially the same thing, but technically they're not. But there are different applications for those things. So I guess that's important to make sure you're not
you're getting the right thing.
You're applying?
Yeah.
First semester, first year, have all your papers organized. If you want to get your bank card, if you want to get your student card, if you want to do all this, you need to have all your papers. So I just had them in a folder.
How did you find applying for the accommodation? In first year, for Trinity Hall?
I think I was very lucky. So what they also don't tell you, so CAO obviously comes out in the rounds and every Irish person knows where they want to go. And so as soon as they get their offer, they're clicking on accept. I didn't know that. And I was obviously debating where I was going, so I didn't accept it until the Thursday evening of that week. So I didn't apply to halls until Thursday night of that week. Because it's open to apply from February, March? They just hold you, and if you don't get a place, then they just discard your application. But if you do get a place, then they look at it. I didn't know, so I was literally applying that week because I'd read the website and it was oh yeah, we have accommodation for most first years. There'll only be a few people who miss out. No, it's very competitive to get into. So I wrote this application and thank goodness I spent time on it because I was put on the waiting list for 10 minutes. Welcome to Trinity Hall. You have 2 days to accept this offer, otherwise it will disintegrate.
Did you want to have share a room, or did you want a single room?
Absolutely not.
So I applied for a single room, got given a shared room, but luckily I knew a girl in the year above who was living in Trinity Hall like the year before, and she was like, yeah, you need to get in Trinity Hall. You can't live anywhere else if you want to like have a wild time. I accepted the room. My roommate was great, like best time ever.
Shout out to Susie.
Shout out to just on your application, make sure you like talk about like how involved you want to be with college, like any experience that you've had living away from home, and mention that you'll be like living away from home and like you just want to feel part of the family and you're really interested to like meet people from different places. Just looking for people who really want to like get involved in the community. I think I could be completely wrong, like who knows, maybe they just lucky dip it. Don't suck up to them, like just write like actually who you are, like how you feel, but make sure like you express the fact that you really are like engaged. They apparently match people based on their applications. Flat was such a good match for everybody. I think it's worth like really looking into it, because my roommate and I, we basically wrote the same application.
Although I appreciated the international portion of it, there were no Irish students in my flat, and I think it's because I stressed my international background as part of my application. I spoke a lot about coming from a multicultural background and appreciating that aspect of halls, because they talked a lot about that on the website. Yeah. So I think if I were going to do it all over again, I would remove that part, just because I really would have appreciated more Irish students.
How helpful were Trinity in the move across to Ireland, but also in the accommodation process?
I had like a really good email communication with the US rep who had visited us, my school, and like another woman. And I had really great communication with them, so I always could ask them email, and I got them emails almost back like all the time. People rely a little too much on the academic registry, that's not their job. Their job is literally to get you your student card and keep numbers in order. You know, like their job isn't to answer everybody's questions. There are other people who's that's their job. Like it just took me looking up who was the North American rep for, you know, first years, who was the this and that. Like that's all available, and if you email them, they email you back. I will say now, accommodation took a really long time to get back to. I think like 2 or 3 weeks before I left, which was very stressful, but also I get it, there were tons of other students they were dealing with, as well as the Irish students.
I think depending on like how you're paying, I mean there can always be stresses with that, but there wasn't anything unusual. I could, you know, set up a spot for accommodation. I think it was pretty simple for the most part.
I think it was just kind of like expecting that everything will happen a little bit later than you might want it to, especially if you're an early planner. If you're a late planner, that's also not the best, because you have to like figure out plane tickets, so many different things, you know. You have to just make sure that you're organized and ready to travel across the world to start school somewhere, you know? It's stressful, but it's such a thrill.
Like when you're going to college, everything feels very heightened and intense, but then the moment it happens, it's like, oh, whatever. There was a WhatsApp group for all the international first years. Some people within that group, they already were getting accommodation before other people, and it was very, you know, it was very echo chambery. Halls released like an Excel spreadsheet so you could put your name in and you could figure out who you were rooming with. Claire, who was also American, she started a Facebook group with all of us.
I ran into a bit of difficulty in the beginning because I did not get my official acceptance on the 21st. They couldn't verify whether I was still being considered for halls, and I didn't know what was happening with that. So what I did is I ended up reserving a spot in private accommodation, which I was upset about at the time, because I knew that I would be separate from a lot of the first years, and I wasn't sure. Like I didn't know much about Dublin, the accommodation situation, and I knew it was really hard to find things, and it was also a lot more expensive if you went private. So we arrived in Dublin and we were going like to the global office, which I'm sure you'll become familiar with if you are an international student, trying to ask them what was happening, trying to figure out if I had a spot, because they weren't responding to any of our emails. They said it was like confidential. They couldn't tell us anything until I got my official acceptance, and once I had my official acceptance, they said they were still processing things, and I didn't know whether I should begin moving into the room that I had booked in the private accommodation or if I should hold out for halls. But luckily the global room helped a lot actually, and they were able to make halls for us, and I finally got 2 days. So I think it was like Friday before Freshers Week. I flew out Wednesday and stayed with my parents, and then the Friday before Freshers Week I actually got a place, and they were like, oh yeah, of course, it was fine, we've been like reserving a spot for you. Everybody whose application had been like mismanaged or mistranslated, like they got a space reserved, which was great, and it would have been great to know that a couple days earlier. I was able to get back my deposit and everything from the other private accommodation, which is great because halls is like a much more affordable option. Like it's still expensive. Knowing the Dublin housing market, it's a really good deal.
How was it like moving into halls, and was it easy to organize? Any complications? Anything to warn future students about?
My mom helped me to move in.
The hard part was just like finding where to find, like, for example, like bed linings and like sheets and everything. Like that was like the hard part because like it was the first time we'd been in Dublin. Moving into halls was super smooth for me.
I am kind of a hoarder, so actually picking up and traveling over there with like suitcases to live there was very stressful for me. Like, I figured it out now. I like have my groove or whatever of how much stuff I bring. But at first I was like, oh, I want nobody want this in my dorm. I want this.
Tips on like what to bring and what not to bring when you're moving.
It's funny. Anything that I didn't need is probably my parents' fault because they kept saying like, you should basically bring like everything that's kind of, you know, that's important to you. You should bring like your whole room almost. To some extent, that's good advice because you want to feel at home where you are. I brought too much stuff. Like I've since brought stuff back and I'm like, guys, why did I bring this? I don't need this. If you use it regularly in your life, bring it. And maybe, you know, if you like I got some posters and stuff for my room that I wanted to bring. So
lamps, like pictures, like all these things, like picture frames, whatever you're gonna put in your room. Wait until you get there to get that because otherwise your suitcase will be heavy. Know that you're gonna have to replace some things and you're gonna have to like buy some new stuff, I guess. Halls has had like a good amount of storage space, but remember that you also have like suitcases. So if you're gonna like store those, just make sure like you can like put it on top of the dresser, you can put it like somewhere in the hallway. I think it's just like planning on how to use your space correctly as well. Like if you're gonna be using notebooks, just wait until you get there to buy notebooks, you know, don't take them from home, like things like that.
Went over with both my parents. I packed 3 huge bags full of stuff because I have a lot of stuff, and you know, maybe some people would decide to be a minimalist, but I just said, nah, I'm gonna just pack a bunch of stuff and call it a day. I brought my clothing. That was a lot of the stuff I had to bring because you know me, I have a very large wardrobe. All your clothing needs to be very versatile. It's a word I use on my YouTube channel a lot, but I mean it. You need to have clothing that can be easily changed. But I was from the South, where everything was like one temperature most of the time. Irish weather is just so much more fickle. You just need to have like a wardrobe that can be used a lot. Like I brought a bunch of books too because I like my books and my books make me feel at home. Like I brought my own sheets and comforter because I didn't know really where to get those yet. Thread counts and stuff in Ireland and America are different, and I like my thread counts. So especially with halls is really nice. Like you have like that nice shopping center just way close. So I could get like all my pots and pans and all that when I got there.
IKEA is great if you need like kitchen stuff or like some bigger items, but I definitely recommend instead going to Pennies or going to just like a shop in town because I don't think the savings are worth like the hassle of getting all the way out there when there are other places that do things cheaply in town.
Ireland and America are very different, and in America you can get useless things that do pretty much anything, and in Ireland you can't. So if you have like a weird thing that you think you might want, you need to bring it. Bring a plug converter thing. That's gonna become your best friend, but bring that and bring an extension cord that has American plugs because probably like the first year, for me at least, I didn't want to go and buy a bunch of new plugs because wires and stuff are annoying. International students could come a week early. It's called technically Smart Start, and it has like all these little classes and stuff, but I mostly just did it so I could move in a week early.
A lot of it is trying to know Dublin especially. So if you feel pretty independent about it, you know, then maybe you don't have to, but like you definitely don't have to do it if you're an American. But I mean, if you want to, I know a lot of people who really liked it.
How did you find halls in general?
I love living in halls. Like I definitely say if you're coming to Trinity, like you've got to apply to Trinity Hall. Don't do it like I did. Make sure you apply in advance. Make sure you do everything in advance.
There were some good things and bad things, I guess, like any student accommodation. I think the best thing about it is I made some really, really amazing friends there, and it was just so easy because I could walk 2 minutes and I could be at Emily's place. It was just so nice being close to everyone and having like my roommates.
I really, really enjoyed it. I found it was a great way to really jump into university life. It really gave me like that opportunity. And I'm so glad that like I got in because I feel that like 90% of my friends I made through halls. This high quality standard of accommodation, I was expecting it to be really like run down, very like cheap, but it was gorgeous. I felt like if I was living in some like almost like a hotel. Like it was the gardens, and we had like a sports like center, and we had study space and like a shop. Like my kitchen, for example, we were on the 4th floor. We had with a view of like the mountains and a bit of like raft mines.
Trinity is what's in Dublin too, and it's kind of very much city center. halls are in a place called the Rathmines, which is right in Dublin 4. It's a little far away, so it's not on central campus, but it was very, very safe area, like very residential. I would say it's about 20 minutes by bus in the Lewis, a tram system, I guess, for those who don't know. A lot of people took the Lewis, but that was a 10-minute walk to the Lewis, whereas the bus stop was right outside Halls, and you always would get a seat on the bus too, because the 140 is the route you take, and it starts at Halls.
And it runs more frequently than the stinky Lewis, so Lewis sucks.
If you don't want to spend money on public transport and you want to walk it, it is going to be like about a 45-minute walk, which is kind of annoying. I liked my room a lot. I had a single. I know people who have had doubles too, so it's kind of whatever you prefer. But I thought it was great. I had my own room, my own bathroom, and then I shared a kitchen with some people.
And in our rooms have little bathrooms, so you don't have to share a bathroom with anyone, which was the big selling part for me. And they're pretty good. Like, you get a desk, you get a nice wardrobe, you get a bed that has little drawers. That was exciting. I was thrilled when I found my little drawer bed.
You get to be where all the other first years are, so you're kind of going through something similar together. And you're exposed to a lot more international students, which I feel is really important, because I had been so shocked by how many Irish students end up living at home still because of accommodation and it being so insanely pricey.
In Ireland, a lot of people come home at the weekend, and you'll find it the weirdest thing when you first move there. But if you start to feel lonely at the weekend, just try and meet more people who are from different countries who will be staying there, or certain Irish people who will be staying there.
I definitely enjoyed it as a place to have access to other students, and it just made socializing a lot easier. You have that international base. Halls is intense and exhausting. Like, there's always something happening, which is really great when you're trying to make connections and get to know people and explore.
Halls is kind of a party place. Like, first year, be serious in your studies, but also Halls was for partying. Be ready to be up at 3 a.m. listening to like music blasting from like someplace.
Living in Halls was great, and like I had a great time, and you can really find the group of people that's right for you. Like, if you want to go out all the time, then there's people who want to go out all the time. If you're into like gaming and staying inside all the time, there's people who are into that. If you're like a bit of a mix, then there's people who do that. If you're into drama, then like there's the Halls musical.
I had people who I'd party with at Halls, and then I had people who I took dinner with. My friends Dave and Seamus, we had like dumpling night once a week.
Aww, I didn't know that. That's so cute.
There's always somebody that you're going to meet because of the size of it, and because living in flats with people who are then on courses with people, or you meet someone at a Prince or whatever, like you're definitely going to meet someone that's like into the same kind of things as you, and that you can form like a really lasting friendship with. If you can handle living in a shared room in Trinity Hall, I'd say it's probably like a really good way to like develop a bond very quickly with people. Like, if you don't know people around, you just find that because you're in each other's space, your flat like bonds very, very quickly.
The people there were like in charge, were pretty helpful and stuff in a lot of cases. They try to be very good with like coming and fixing things. They get quite angry quite easily, I'd say, and people get mad fines, which is something that incoming students need to know. You could be literally throwing a rock to signal like a friend in their window or something, and you get fined for that.
Halls has this thing called the JCR. It's like an RA system. The JCR nights out were kind of fun just because they were nights out, but I honestly didn't go to all of them. I didn't feel like a need to. I'd rather go out with like my friends from class. Weirdly enough, mainly friends for people who lived in Dublin.
Or near Dublin, at least.
Basically from Dublin. No, I'm kidding. I'm not.
All the JCR people are second years who are voted in by the year before. Mine was just like a bit of a dud. Like, I'm just gonna be honest, they weren't very engaged, I feel. But also I didn't really have problems that needed them. By April, I did decide I needed to like move out, so I found an apartment by myself.
Which you were going to get for the next year anyway.
Yeah. So I was gonna get for the next year anyway, and my parents were coming over to help me anyway, so I was like, why don't I just go ahead and find an apartment? Like, I went to boarding school, so I did the dorm thing. The communal dorm living thing for 4 years. Loved it. Fun. I loved my flatmates. Like, they are all my friends still. I talk to them a good amount. So this has nothing really to do with them. It had more to do with the fact that I just couldn't live in that environment anymore. 5 years of being in a dorm, you lose the allure of dorm life.
Yeah, I don't think I could have done it for another year, which is why I didn't go into private accommodation. The next year I went and found my own place to live with friends.
I thought I'd ask about your finding accommodation for second year.
The first thing that comes to mind is I'm annoyed that we never got around to having you for tea.
Stop, it's so fine.
I'd say start looking early and use your network as much as you can. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like it's such a word of mouth kind of place, especially in Dublin. Like, you always have private student accommodation as a backup. Just reach out to people that you know in other years who might be like going on Erasmus or who might be graduating or even are just like looking for a change, because that is honestly how you hear about things. So we ended up looking really, really early. I think we were so stressed out.
So stressed.
We'd heard so much.
We heard horror stories. We went to like quite a few like open houses, and then we found like the last house that we visited, we really, really liked, and then we signed the contract. Looking back now, what I would do differently would be, first of all, I would be way more organized than I was, especially from the move to from halls to the house. We underestimated the difficulty of like moving from one place to another. I would really organize that better.
The problem is if you go and sign your own lease, it is a 12-month lease, which means you'll be paying through the summer. If you are going private like that, just make sure you have something lined up for the summer, like a job, or you organize really early to let it out to other people over the summer. And I think we were just really immature and kind of naive with how we thought things would work out. So it ended up being a bit of a mess, moving everything over and like trying to make back the money on the rent. But
it was a learning experience.
Exactly. We learned a lot.
Because of having to rent it out for the 12 months and the Dublin housing market being the way it is, it was cheaper to go to student accommodation. Unless you want to spend the whole summer in Dublin trying to get onto a list to view a property, which is hard enough to do in itself, you probably are just better off going to student accommodation, because the savings that you'll make are minimal, I imagine. And the quality of accommodation is better. I mean, like, some people are really adamantly against private student accommodation, but it's just very hard to find good quality accommodation in Dublin that's not private if you don't know someone in Dublin, or if you're not able to spend your summer there.
Compared to other countries, I'd say the renting process in Ireland is fairly simple. All they had to do was, you needed a recommendation, high school teachers recommended me, and then you need the deposit sent in as soon as possible. Usually it's just 1 month, which is good, because in some cities it's 2 months.
2 months, yeah.
And you set up all like the Wi-Fi, you set up the electricity, you set up like the heating. Never have I like felt like more of an adult than when I was like calling the trash companies to like compare plans to figure out how much we were actually going to be like recycling or whatever. Thank you, Thornton.
Just think about my apartment, right? It was just such dumb luck. Like, people to this day don't really believe that, I don't know, like I'm not in the mafia or something. I still remember like the day I came back to my flat at Paul's when I told them I found a place, and they were all like, what? Everything aligned well. So I don't know if my tips are just be happy and just go and like, I was just really nice, because I literally said to my landlord, I'm like, I will take this apartment now. Like, can you just let me have it? And he was like, yeah, okay.
The north is great to live in. We heard a lot of like horror stories saying that like the north was unsafe, which is why I went to the south. I have friends living in the north. I feel like it's great. So I would
get a much better price
for like in the north. Yeah.
Kavanagh Court, and what's it like living there?
Kavanagh Court's like very, very different. I mean, first of all, a big plus was I didn't have to take any transportation to college, because it's a 20-minute walk, whereas Halls is like an hour walk, so you know that would be like the Lewis every single day. Kavanagh's different in that it's still a good amount of like partiers there, but it's a lot easier to just focus on your studies and kind of chill and like do study groups with people. There aren't really any first years. I mean, there might be a few first years there, but there aren't that many. I guess they're just starting to get more serious about college or something. It's more modern than Halls as well. Less things are broken or breaking, which is another Halls thing. The area was a little bit at times. I was fine there. I mean, I chilled there.
Yeah, since like you're living with other college students, you know, you always have backup. If that makes sense, not backup, but you know.
It was nicer in that it was closer to cafes and stores and college, and I think it might be the only unionist accommodation that's just tied with Trinity students. They provide some Trinity type of assistance, if that even makes any sense. You get to meet other students from Trinity that you wouldn't meet anywhere else. Like, I met a lot of interesting people from different grades. I think Kavanagh's only singles. And the weird thing about Kavanagh is that everyone pays the same price, but the rooms are different sizes.
I'd love to know about your secondary accommodations. That was Binary Hub. Yes, cool, okay. Yeah, so what was that like, and what was it like applying for it, and what was it like living there?
Pretty easy to apply to. I mean, you actually just go through their website. I think it's accommodation that's kind of sponsored by Trinity because it's really close. Like Binary Hub's like a 20-minute walk from Trinity. So you just go to their website and apply that way. It's honestly really easy and they communicate with you really well. Binary Hub is a bit more expensive, but you know, it all depends on what your budget is, you know. Location is really, really good. So like it's a 20-minute walk. You hardly, unless it's like really raining pretty hard, take a bus or anything, like I'll just walk all the time. And that in itself saves money. So location, how that translates to the price of the place, it's a similar thing. You get your own room, you share a flat, like a kitchen with some other people. If you want to meet a lot of Irish friends, it's not really the best place because a lot of people who live there are like Americans on study abroad for a semester.
How did you find Ardcairn, like since you decided not to go for this?
It's definitely the student accommodation I recommend. The people who work there are really friendly. They take care of you, like they make sure everything's okay. Like during lockdown, they were great. Everything you could possibly need is on site. They ask me how my essays are going and like they really get to know you and it's really cute.
Do you have any recommendations for international students on like where to get your food?
Lidl and Aldi are like the supermarkets that I'd recommend shopping in because branded stuff like that's imported into Ireland is so much more expensive than it is in the UK.
It's really easy to, you know, pack lunches and stuff and just take that in. So I mean, that's a huge money saver. But if you don't want to do that, I often want to have lunch out because like I don't go out much for any other meals really. Like I cook a lot at home, so sometimes I feel like I can afford to go out to lunch and stuff.
Some of my flatmates love to make really intense meals. I am someone who I think, especially depending on your own schedule, you need to just find like 5 meals you could eat a lot of and just go with it. At Halls, there's you can get a lot of food at the Rathmines. Let me tell you, the Rathmines is full of grocery shopping opportunities. Really close to Halls, like right next to Halls, is like this Tesco Express, which became a very good friend of mine.
Tesco Express, which is a little more expensive. They don't have quite the variety that you might find at like a Lidl or an Aldi, but it is close and it's convenient.
This is good for things that are perishables, you know, like things that you're going to be going through a lot of milk and eggs. So those are things that maybe you don't want to continually have to walk 10 minutes to get. You could just walk 3 minutes to get.
There's an Aldi not too far from Trinity Hall, and there's also a larger Tesco. So it kind of depends on what you're looking for. I cook a lot of Asian food as well, and so there's several really good Asian stores throughout Dublin. Dublin has a really large immigrant community, especially for places like India and Pakistan, and that's just awesome to have a lot of that like really great food there.
I spent a lot of my budget on clothing and books, so I didn't spend as much money on food. We all make our choices.
Work out your priorities.
There's a Dunn's too in the shopping center that's in the Rathmines, the Swan shopping center, where you can get your bougie food. So if you have like a special event and you just want some bougie food, you gotta go there. Let me recommend, right next to there is this little butcher, and he is the cutest little old man. And once a month, or like if something cool happened, I would go, and he has this teriyaki sirloin steak he does, and if you tell him you're a student, he gave me a discount. It was so fun.
Like another thing also that I would give out as advice would be know who you're moving in with. I feel that like when you live with someone, you think you know them, but you don't. We worked so well with each other. We never had any problems, you know, about anything.
We got really lucky. Yeah. I feel like it can go really wrong. But even if you don't get on with your flatmates, you just be an adult. Like, you set boundaries, just be super explicit about everything, and like you'll get through it. But it's definitely learning to live with other people that aren't your family.
And I feel like the first thing that we put down was we want to be like honest with each other, and if there's any problems, we'll bring them up. And so like we tried every Sunday evening to like have like a flat meeting, and we kind of like put some rules down to see how they would work, and like some of them did, the others we just kind of were like, we don't need these rules, and so we just like kind of forgot about them.
One more thing about like Dublin specifically is that because if you can find flatmates that you get on with, I really, really recommend prioritizing it, because rental is so hard in the city and so expensive. I really do feel like after first year in halls, what's the hardest part about moving into another place is that everybody gets so spread out. So you really don't expect the time and the effort and the energy that it'll take to visit your friends and see them in their houses. And so it gets a lot harder. Yeah, exactly. So if you can sort of create somewhat of a network at home, it makes a big difference.
Personally, the reason why I wanted to like get a house with someone is because I wanted to have like a warm atmosphere. and like cozy, that I could just go home, be comfortable, like even like decorate, make it feel like a home away from home, for it to be like my second family.
So that's it for the video on accommodation. So if you are interested in how to apply to Trinity as an international student, make sure to check out the previous video. And if you're looking out for the video on the international student experience in general in Ireland, then make sure to keep an eye out for that. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more, and thanks so much for watching. See you all soon. Bye.